Hi, good morning everyone. Let's get started with the next topic for this training, which is on SAP Web Dispatcher. So, basically, what is an Web Dispatcher and how do we use SAP Web Dispatcher? We'll be covering things like in the SAP landscape where this Web Dispatcher fits in. We'll be covering about the installation process. We'll be covering about the administration of Web Dispatcher and uh, about the load balancing feature of the Web Dispatcher. So these are the different things that we will cover in this particular section. Okay, so let's get started. So here you can see the location where the SAP Web Dispatcher is normally placed. So this is basically you are seeing you have a demilitarized zone. So if you are familiar with the architecture uh, of a system, especially say for example if your user is trying to come from an internet, it will pass through a zone called demilitarized zone. Normally it is created just to hide our main systems or main servers like main SAP systems behind another layer of firewall. Okay, so that is the objective of demilitarized zones set there, so that in case if someone tries to hack, it will go through one additional layer of firewall. Okay, so that is about the DMZ. So now here you can see that this SAP Web Dispatcher, it is in this particular DMZ zone, it is placed separately, and it is showing how this particular web dispatcher is talking to AS ABAP plus Java, ABAP system, or only uh, ABAP system. So we have seen how it is talking. So basically that is about the location, and from the installation perspective actually we can use the SAP INST tool to install the web dispatcher. And normally if you want to go and download it, this is the file which is used. So SAP wdisk.sar. Okay, now the next thing is about the dispatcher request flow. So whenever the SAP request comes to the SAP web dispatcher, how the flow of the request happens, so we'll cover in this particular slide. So basically what is happening here is that we just saw that the function of the web dispatcher ultimately to forward an HTTP request to a specific application server. Okay, here in this particular slide we will look into that how this function is performed. Okay, so when an HTTP request or an HTTPS request is assigned to a server, and it is assigned in two stages. First is the SAP web dispatcher determines whether the incoming HTTP request is for the ABAP request or it is for a Java request. Okay, so the first step as we saw is the web dispatcher determines whether the incoming HTTP request is an ABAP request. ABAP, that means it could be a BSP, it could be a WebGenPro, okay, or it is a Java request. Java could be like a JSP, a servlet, or a WebGenPro Java application. So once it has determined the type of the request, then it finds a group of server in the SAP system that can execute the request. Okay, then next thing is the load balancing then carried out within this group. After SAP Web Dispatcher had identified a server, it forwards the request to the ICM, the Java dispatcher of the relevant application server. So in the case of the dual stack system, the SAP Web Dispatcher forwards Java request to the ICM process and not Java dispatcher of the selected instance. Okay, so that is about the dispatcher request flow. So let's go to the next slide, which is showing basically how the flow is happening between, say for example, dispatcher requesting the request. So URL, based on the URL table, it will be sent to the ABAP load balancing or Java load balancing. So if the application state is stateful. Okay, so basically in this diagram we are showing how the exact identification of server has happened. Okay, now let's look about the load balancing, how the load balancing is performed. Okay, for the load balancing, there are two ICF services which should be active. So this is the first one, that is SAP public ICMan, and second one is SAP public ICF underscore info. So these two services has to be active for the dispatcher to function to do the load balancing. Okay, the SAP web dispatcher obtains information about the application servers of the app SAP system from the message server via HTTP or HTTPS. You can use the SAP web dispatcher in pure ABAP system as well as combined ABAP plus Java systems and pure Java systems. Okay. Okay, the next slide we are seeing that how the web dispatcher is communicating to the message servers in a pure ABAP system. This is a ABAP plus Java system, how it is talking to a message server and forwarding the request. And at the bottom you can see that this is a AS Java system, how it is contacting the respective message server. Okay, so basically this is used, it uses two parameters. So one is the ms host rdis/ms host, second is ms/http underscore port to specify the assigned message server of SAP system. Okay, now as we saw in the previous slide that how the SAP web dispatcher communicates if it is a pure ABAP system, it is a ABAP plus Java system, or if it is a pure Java system, and which are the parameters which is used. Okay, and installation options perspective, this being a 7.0 or higher system, so we just focus on either we can use the provide executable and profile to run it, either we can run it using the bootstrap option, or we can run it using SAP INST. So all three options are available for 7.0 onwards. Okay, to launch the web admin interface, basically this is the URL, that is http://server name : the webdinfo port /SAP/admin. Okay, alright, that's what I wanted to cover in this particular section. Thanks for joining and have a nice day. Bye bye.